Well, my first question is probably one you've gotten a lot. Now, is was this originally supposed to be a prequel to the Saw films? And can you talk about how it like the evolution towards what it is now?
Well, it was never originally supposed to be that. It wasn't conceived as that. What happened was we wrote it, and a company called Fortress was going to finance it themselves. But they at one point we were done, and they were going to make it. Marcus was going to direct it. They needed a partner, and so we were talking to certain companies, and one of those companies was Twisted. And an executive at Twisted, you know, who makes the Saw movies, and an executive at Twisted said, "Oh, this is when Lee said he's not coming back. He's not going to do four." They didn't know what they wanted to do with four, and the executive thought this could be a good origin story for John Kramer. We certainly would have to change things around, but in the movie, there's a family that is part of this home invasion, and then there's things going on inside the house. And so, like, the idea was that it would be John Kramer as a young child being sort of exposed to this extreme sort of thing, and then it would come out of him later in life. That, of course, it was squashed very quickly, but the script is what got us the job for Saw 4, 5, and 6. So, because it's in the same sort of ballpark.
Yeah, well, with those movies, you're not directing them, and you're kind of handing off a script. With this, you guys really had a hand in making this thing come to life. Can you kind of talk about actually getting to write a script and then taking it and directing it and seeing it come into fruition from the script stage?
Well, really, you get to wear a few more hats along the storytelling chain, be it writing, directing, and then finally the editing of it. And it just it allowed us to protect the writer. And as a director, you have it's a wide open canvas where you can finally just pinpoint the exact details and thoughts you were thinking of, and immediately writing things down and thoughts and shadows and just how you wanted to depict the world and what you wanted to carve away and what you wanted to hone in on. But it was also very helpful where you're never going to have all the time in the world to tell a story. You have a set day, you have so many shots you can get. And it allowed, I think, a prioritization to include the writer in there. So, like, I think this is the most important part, whereas another mind may pick, now we really have to show, element A or something like that. So I think it was helpful even in the editing of what you could do practically in a given time slot.
Did you want to speak on that too? Or?
Well, there is a moment of separation when you're writing a script and then handing it off to someone else, and even during that time when you're writing it, you're sort of writing it for that person to have to go into talk to the department heads and the actors, and so but with this one it was very different because you write down the words and you hope that people interpret it how it is in your mind. Often they don't, and so. Like when we've seen the Saw films or the Feast films, it's generally close to what we wanted it to be in our minds, but it's different. And sometimes you enjoy the changes that were made. And sometimes you're like, this is what it should have been. This would have been a little better. But with this one, no excuses, because it's everything that is on the screen is exactly what we had in the screenplay and how we conceived it in our minds. And this one is very near and dear to our hearts, I think, because it is such a not personal story necessarily, but it's our story. And it hasn't, and we have no excuses for everything that's on the screen because it's all our decisions.
Okay, well, before coming to Comic-Con, I think I was only familiar with your film through this poster at a couple of bus stops. I saw it, and then I came to Comic-Con and saw the film, and it's like one of those amazing surprise things you see. But I've also noticed that there's a couple other films here that are the same way, where we haven't heard too much, and they're surprise hits, and they're blowing everything out of Hall H. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the fact that at the end of this year, we're going to see some really crazy, amazing original films from you guys and some of the other people that are here. What do you think the shift is all of a sudden with the smaller guys blowing everyone away, and then things like Avatar and Twilight and whatever else, there's a Tron 2, and not really doing its job is blowing people away? Well, I mean, this is what I've heard about this movie. Oh, I don't mean to hype it up, but it's just an interesting thing. These short movies are blowing people away, and the big movies aren't. Can you speak to how imagination plays into that, and what you guys are doing to create something original?
The short response to that is thank goodness. I mean, we had a very modest budget. We had a very little amount of time. So this movie, if it was made as much as for the love of what we did, it was also made with a lot of anger over what we weren't seeing. And so it's like, well, here's our chance. The window's open just a crack and we can fit through it. well, let's put everything behind it, the full spectrum of all the emotions we have. And fortunately, due to every artist that contributed to this one, musically, photographically, it came together, and it's an angry show.
Well, and with those bigger titles you mentioned, they're very expensive, and you almost need to think of them as marketing tools. Like, how are we going to sell, Slurpees with this movie? And so this one, which was made for a modest budget, and we made it with the Weinsteins. That was, they gave us the initial money to make it, and we were given a certain amount of autonomy. It was, here's your money. This is how many days you have. Good luck. And they let us sort of do what we wanted to do, and so this was just made to be a great American horror movie. This is a response to seeing remakes and sequels in the cinemas, but not really seeing anything that was new and shocking and inventive. Strangers was a great example last year of a wonderful horror movie. But a lot of the really great ones that are really impactful are the French horror films, like Martyrs and Inside. And so this is sort of the response to those, that we can make a great American horror movie, and this is it. And it was a benefit that we had a low budget, because we could take certain risks and go certain territories that maybe a studio or conscious producer may have not wanted to go, because I'm trying to think. Sometime like Band-Aid, that could be a wonderful tie-in for us, like Band-Aids or like kind of Brinks security system. Brinks security. Yeah, the Brinks security system presents The Collector. Everyone should have a security system. So something like that could work really well. We should work on that. But this was made just as a movie. We weren't thinking about any of that other stuff when we were doing it. And so when we wanted to push, we pushed, and it's all up there on the screen. So.
Okay, that being said, so your objection and goal is not to sell popcorn like a lot of these bigger movies, what you said, but it's to entertain an audience. And I'm wondering, can you talk about some of the scenes in this film that you really wanted to see yourself put on screen? Some of this crazy stuff. Can you talk about some of your favorite scenes and some of the stuff you really want the fans to experience without giving anything away?
Well, we wanted to. There was a few things that I'd like to bring up. One is in the first act, we wanted to show exactly one drop of blood, just one. Because by the third act, call the fire department. We've got hoses of it going off. But in that first act, just one. And it was the way it was done and how it establishes a character that was key. Second is, if a horror film has a few staples, you've got blood, maybe some explosions, but also nudity. And yet there's always like that way of, well, how do you organically work people having a relationship into the middle of an intense situation? Well, in this one, I think we've figured a way to not make it seem like a necessity, but orchestrate something that pushes beyond. And it's a great credit to the goth band Bauhaus and how it happened. And that is part 3. 3, I don't know if you remember The Hunger, but The Hunger, yeah.
Chris Makepeace.
Oh, there you go. So, like, the Hunger used Bela Lugosi's Dead. Well, so do we. And we wanted to take it from The Hunger.
Well, now, speaking of The Hunger, I've got to ask, when are you guys going to dig Chris Makepeace out of the dust and put him in one of your films? Because he's dying to act again, and a lot of people don't know this. Okay. He's awesome.
Well, agreed. Agreed. No, agreed. The nice thing is, all right, say some folks show up on July 31st to watch this movie. That gives us another little opportunity to tell another story. And yeah, that gives us an opportunity to make a call like, hey, Chris, let's go.
What's even worse, talking about The Hunger, I probably shouldn't get stuck on this, but the other guy in that was in Weird Science. He's in a lot of genre movies. He also is looking for work. I represent both of them, and I came here to talk to you. No, I'm kidding. No. You're talking about a sequel. Where do you think you would take this, and do you think you could see it going as far as the Saw movies have gone, to like 7, 8, 9, where we see one of these every year?
Well, it helps filling out a story if you know where things would go after that credit, if it doesn't all end in an ultimate, with an ultimate finality. So this one definitely comes to a thematic close. The bow is tied on it. However, we thought, okay, should the opportunity arise, it could be a triptych, could be 3, but just 3. And that means we know what 2 is already, we know what 3 is already, but 1 is its own beast, and you can stop at 1 if you'd like. But should people want to be scared again in this same machine, we can turn it back on.
Now, that being said, it's interesting talking about originality and trying to bring some imagination back into the theater. What do you think is the hardest thing about trying to create a sequel that is original to itself while still hinting at the first one and giving the audience something new? I mean, is that incredibly hard? And can we talk about that as far as Saw 7 that was just announced? You guys are doing that, and how you keep that momentum going with something like that also?
Absolutely. I think that with the Saw sequels, I just cannot wait for everybody to see Saw 6. Because Saw 6, Kevin Groiter did an amazing job. I've overused this quote already, but he did the Babe Ruth, pointed to the stands, and hit the ball out of the park and into the next stadium. It's the best one we've been associated with. It's done. I've already seen it 3 times, and I can't say that about any of the others. I'll put my hand on a religious document. I really love this movie. So I'm eager for fans to come back. I'm eager to also, if anyone felt slighted by previous entries, check this one out.
Well, and really the key is that you just need a really strong A story. We got that in 6, and you can look at a lot of the other sequels. Which one are the great ones? The great ones is just, you have the elements that are signatures to the movies, but it's not completely reliant upon that. It's actually coming up with a really good, strong A story that provides the sort of action, intensity, and intrigue that's going to carry you through, through from point A to point B without depending upon past movies. And so we have a really good A story, and then you bring in John Kramer and Jigsaw and the traps and all that sort of stuff, and it just adds up to just a really complete movie. And at the end of 6, there is a feeling of resolution, which is something that we haven't been able to do yet. And so it is fulfilling, and it ends the second trilogy very well, and then ties a bow on the entire franchise very well, so that you have a really feeling of closure at the end. And that, I think, is what has made it so appealing to us, and I think it will be appealing to fans.
So basically what you're saying is 7, 8, and 9 are going to be another trilogy into itself that isn't so reliant upon your knowledge of the first 6 films.
Obviously we can't give too much away, but after you see 6, you'll understand that, okay, 1, 2, and 3 are their thing, 4, 5, and 6 are their thing, and then I see where we're going to go with 7. But I can't say, I don't want to give anything away, but once you see the movie, you'll understand that.
Is it hard to keep the 2 of these projects separated as far as thinking about I'm just thinking about cool scenes that, like, we were talking about scenes audiences want to see. You think of a scene and you're like, oh my God, that'd be brilliant. Then where do you go if this takes off and is like a huge successful franchise, and then you got Saw and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this?
No. Fortunately, with should there be another installment of The Collector, we already know what that would be. I mean, it's already has its road work before it, and it's of a different style, and it comes from a different place. Whereas the Saw films have a very distinct Bible that they work from. They have an ultimate end that they're going to, and they also have a very there's a system in place that you get to fill up each time. So respectfully, you do that. But in this one, with the Collector, the terrain is definitely more wild, and we just aim to take risks. We might fall flat on our faces, but we're going to do so with pride.
Well, that sounds great. Thanks so much for talking to me, and it was nice meeting both of you.
Thank you.
It was good to meet you guys. I can't wait to see more.